Good morning. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 71. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. Today, I have the honor of sitting down with one of my best friends, who is also a business partner, also a Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu board member and ministry partner, and to be honest, just an all-around incredible human who loves the Lord, his wife, his family, and is incredibly loyal to anything he is a part of and deciding to help with. About a year and a half ago, I was on Jocko's podcast, and we were talking through what we teach at Echelon Front, and we were actually talking about cover and move, which is the first law of combat that we teach at Echelon Front. And I actually used Josh as an example of cover and move, just because of his attitude towards life, always helping others, and his dedication to moving the mission forward, whatever mission he's a part of, whether it's being a part of the Echelon Front team, which he is, helping out with all of our FTXs and helping grow that program with Cody and Justin, to helping out with the ministry, to being a good jiu-jitsu training partner, which that's where Josh and I's friendship goes back to, back in the Memphis days when he lived in the Memphis, Tennessee area, and I lived near Memphis, Tennessee in actually South Haven, Mississippi. We both trained at a jiu-jitsu gym together. And I'm sure we'll talk about that today, but that's where we first met. It was just an extremely loyal, good human. Amanda and I moved out to Texas for what I was doing with Echelon Front. And that same year, Josh ended up moving out with his family to grow and expand his business. He is a business owner, a successful business owner. He has two businesses, which we'll talk about today. Total Fitness Kickboxing here in the Dallas area, Dallas-Fort Worth area. One's in Denton, one's in Frisco. And we also have On the Path printing together. We do Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu together like I talked about. Josh, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, man?
How are you?
I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It's I know it's been a long time coming. Wanted to be able to get you on the podcast, and I appreciate your flexibility. Lucas, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, gentlemen?
How are you?
You know, just feeling like Wish.com Matt Damon, living every day to the fullest.
Okay.
All right.
But the amount of people who have made that comment, they're like, you look so much like Jason Bourne now that you got that haircut. It makes me feel like, one, the people that I'm around need to have their vision checked. And step two is that there's no way that that's accurate. So
I can see it. Now that you said it, I'm not going to be able to unsee it.
I always felt more like Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, especially with the haircut.
So when I had...
For him.
For me. When I had long hair, I always felt like I was Wish.com Zach Wilde. And now I'm feeling a little bit more... Zach Wilde was the guitar player and singer for the Black Label Society. JP. He's just another ugly white guy with long blonde hair and a beard.
Oh, cool.
Yep. We all look alike.
Just a nappy
It's hard to tell any of us apart except for how tall we are. What guitars we play.
Long hair, beard, guitar.
Yeah.
Just
awesome.
another nappy dude.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
Just trying to be ZZ Top.
Josh, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee.
So your whole life?
Born and raised.
Memphis,
1983 to 2018.
Long time, man.
Long time.
Growing up, what was life like? What was the family dynamic? Just, sharing a little bit about who you were as a kid.
Yeah, I had a good home life. So I have a brother. We have the same dad, different moms, and so my dad left. I never saw my mom and dad together, but he was always around from the time I was born. I would go visit him once a month, so I didn't have like a traditional upbringing, but I did have a dad and a mom, even though we were separate. So good upbringing. My mom got us into church, I think, when I was 5 or 6.
Nice.
As far back as I can remember. So
Southern Baptist?
Southern Baptist down in Memphis. Yeah. And we had a close family on my mom's side. So I had a lot of good influences from my uncles. My grandparents were big in my life. My mom being single, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. That's where I went after school. And I was just blessed with that. They were always around and there for me. So
awesome. Anything that you've taken from how your grandparents taught you, how they helped raise you, that you have applied as a father?
Yeah, so my grandparents, especially my grandmother, my grandfather when I was younger was in terrible health. And as I got older, I saw older as in like elementary school, one of his sons, my uncle, kind of called him out one day. He had heart problems. He was in the Air Force district. He had his first heart attack when he was 20 years old, I think.
Oh my God.
So I always struggled with some heart problems, but then his health overall deteriorated, and he called him out. So my grandfather, in his later years, in his late 60s, 70s, he just started like walking around the block. Then he got to where he could do miles, and he started losing weight, and he started getting up out of his chair, and started lifting weights with my uncle. Wow. And when he ended up dying of a heart attack much later, but he was jacked. Awesome. And so I always found that encouraging from my uncle's perspective to be able to address his father that way. But as for me, for my grandparents, they really taught me how to listen. I think growing up with a single mom, and then my mom married my stepdad when I was 9, you kind of not lost in the shuffle, but there's a lot of things going on. I don't blame anybody for that, but sometimes you just kind of get left, and it's you might have something to say, and you just kind of there's no time for you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a way like my mom neglected me.
Yeah,
but
no.
She's working 2 jobs so I can.
Bro, what you're saying is something that every single human should be able to hear and receive. And what I heard you say is it's okay if you don't always have a say and or you're not always included in things with
Correct.
your family. And you have to give your family the benefit of the doubt. You just gave your mom the benefit of the doubt. You knew your mom wasn't going, I don't want Josh to talk right now.
Right.
It was never, not once her intent. And so for you as a kid, you learned humility.
Yeah.
Through those situations and not to take things so personal.
Yeah.
Which when you are being taught humility and feeling those situations and those feelings and emotions, and there's times that our emotions are going to flare up, and that's fine. Your emotions are valid. The problem is we can't be led and ruled by our emotions.
Correct.
And it's cool that you were able to get that.
I think as I got into my teen years, I lost that a little bit, and
we all do that.
Started letting those emotions run a little bit, but.
Yep, I can understand how that is. But it seems like you were able to receive that and come back to that. What was high school like for you? Any sports?
High school, I hated school pretty much from 3rd grade on. It was just something you had to do. I tried to get out of there as much as I could. I did play sports. I was not great at any sports, but I played baseball I played church league baseball, just rec league from kindergarten to like the 9th grade. I didn't really like it, but it was something to do. And then junior high, I started playing basketball and soccer.
Yeah.
I enjoyed those. I enjoyed soccer the most, and it was probably what I was the worst at, but I enjoyed it. And, I played. Sometimes I would start, sometimes I wouldn't, but I think, again, I have a lot more clarity looking back now. Even then, I didn't really apply myself to that either. I was just kind of going through the motions of things. So even though I love sports, I wasn't putting any extra reps or anything in. So, enjoyed soccer and basketball.
Yeah, I love soccer. Did you play soccer as a kid, Lucas?
Did. Yeah.
I wish it was one of the sports. No, I did kickboxing and karate. Growing up, and I did the adventure races that you and I have talked about. But man, I wish I would have played soccer in junior high and high school.
Bro, it was soccer for me was like one of the few sports that, as a vertically challenged individual,
you could still excel.
Yeah, and I have a really, at the time, I don't know that I still haven't jumped in forever, but I had a really big vertical leap. And so, being able to jump 35 or 40 inches off the ground, if given like the proper start, was great for like corner kicks and stuff like that. So there were these times where they would set up plays that were specifically for me. That never happened when I played football. It definitely wasn't happening whenever I played basketball. But they were like, look, if you start over here and you run, we'll have that guy kick it. And if you can get high enough, nobody's going to believe that you're going to get to it. And yeah, those plays worked out great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that soccer I loved because it was one of those few things where they're like, all right, Lucas, this is your time to shine.
Yeah.
Like, come on, baby.
So Josh, as a parent, hearing what you just said, like you didn't put in enough work in sports, and you wish you would have.
Yeah.
How do you instill that into your kids? Because I mean, I know we'll get to your wife and kids for sure, but like as a father, do you reflect upon that and think, okay, hey, had I had this guidance, or if somebody would have told me this, or just in general, like how do you lead your kids to put in maximum effort when they're doing things?
That's a difficult question, and it's a very difficult thing to do. And I don't know if I'm successful at it, but my approach to it, I've gone different ways, and I've talked about on our Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast, like especially with Jiu-Jitsu, I would force them into maximum effort by making them train every time I trained, which was too much. And that's not, especially with a younger kid, I don't think that's the right way. Now that they're older and they see the value of it, it's a little bit easier to approach, but I still ultimately give them the choice. Typically, it's just questions, like, hey, do you feel like you did enough in that? Or if there's those days, which Jake usually is down to go. He never wants to miss. But if he does, I'm always like, for whatever reason. Now, if he's sick, that's a different thing. But, I'm kind of tired today. I don't know. You're really tired? Do you can't do it? Like, just asking them those simple questions and making them self-reflect and come to the conclusion themselves, I think has made a big difference for my kids.
It allows you to give them ownership.
Yeah.
And rather more buy-in. It's their idea. Rather
than you being like, well, you just need to go do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a time and place for that, I think. But I think they're going to be more invested in it the more it's their idea, the more buy-in they have. So
yeah. So go through high school. Any major life things happen that shaped who you are, or you reflect upon, you're like, bro, that was kind of crazy?
The older I got, the more I didn't like people telling me what to do. And the older I got, the worse it got in school, with friendships, with just anything. I wouldn't say there was any particular time that shaped it, but looking back, I could see a trajectory of my life already trying to trend down just from the emotions controlling thing, rebellion. I like to fight, even if there was no reason, and that's just your emotions getting the best of you. And I think looking back on it now, I had people trying to give me the right advice. I just wasn't listening. And I wouldn't say they were even going about it wrong. I would just, as I progressed, I just more and more, I was the guy, like, if you told me don't do this, even if it was to my detriment, I'm probably going to do it just because you told me not to. And that's
okay.
It's not smart. But,
no. So do you think that rebellious attitude that you had was beneficial at times, though? Like, how have you been able to harness that?
I think the rebellious attitude, I don't know if I would say is beneficial, but I think that mindset of pushing boundaries can be. Yep. Now that I'm older, when people tell me, like, I can't do something, it's not like the rebellious mindset will tell you to do things even if it will hurt you when people are telling you you can't do it. When you have take an honest self-assessment and someone tells you, like, you can't do this, and you actually weigh the pros and the cons and put thought into it and you can do it, there's times to push the boundaries when people are putting boundaries on you that are not correct.
So when somebody has those limitations placed upon them, how would you advise them to push back and or break those limitations without being rebellious, therefore reckless?
Yeah, I think you have to know why you're doing it. So if somebody else is putting this is as an adult, if somebody else is putting a limitation on you, if you really just step back and think about it, it's silly. They don't have any. There's nobody really that can put any limitation on you if you have a goal to do something, whether you're going to open a business or do jiu-jitsu or whatever you want to apply to. The limitations are on you, other than the factors that are actual limitations, and those are the things you have to take account for when you're planning for something. But I think if you channel that, your reason isn't to prove them wrong. Now, I'm not gonna lie, that can be a fulfilling feeling.
Yeah.
When people tell you can't do something, and then you go do it and execute, and it's successful. That is a nice feeling. I think how you respond to that still should be in humility. You don't want to be like, "Hey, I told you so." Like,
yeah. And you've been able to do that with business.
Yeah.
And as someone who trains jiu-jitsu, you help out different ministries. You volunteer your time to help others. And so you have to be able to have that, hey, I'm going to prove something attitude with a balance of humility.
Yeah. I think it's funny when you're like in my teens, right after high school, I was kind of lost and not knowing where to go. So I don't think I was arrogant, but I lacked humility. And I think that's the thing that balances that into when you're doing things rather than being reckless.
I would agree. So you graduate from high school. What do you do next? Like, what's your path? What's your plan?
Zero plan. So I had a real close buddy that we were reserve firefighters for like a small county fire department outside of Memphis in Arlington. And we did that. His goal was always to go be a Green Beret. He knew he wanted to be a Green Beret. My goal was to party, and firefighting seemed like it would be fun. They had a reserve program, so it was just enough, but it wasn't. They put you through a reserve program where it was really on the job kind of back then. Yeah. This was 2001. Now, you still would end up having to go get your EMT license back then. I don't think they required paramedic, all that type of stuff. But you could get your foot in the door. You would go on shift, and you had to go a certain amount of times a month and build it from there. So I did that. All my friends went to college. My parents were like, well, you didn't make good enough grades to get a scholarship. We can't afford to send you to college, so it's, what do you want to do? My dad was a union sheet metal welder, and he always told me to go to some type of trade school, not sheet metal welding.
That's a hard industry.
Yeah, and they did like big duct work for like industrial, like ducts you could walk inside. And,
so I'm sure that picture that James Gonzalez sent us about metal roofing, wear gloves. I read the text. I didn't even have to look at the picture to know what I was about to see.
Same.
Just cut up hands. So I'm sure you saw a lot of that growing up, or heard stories from your dad.
And his fingers were just mangled, So I decided I didn't put any thought, anything. I was just like, electrician sounds good. So I joined the local union in Memphis.
Yeah.
Went to electrician school. They have a trade school program, so you go, I think, 2-3 nights a week for classroom, and then they put you with a job as an apprentice, and you're working. It's actually a great thing.
I don't know why more of our youth don't know about the beauty of trade school.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
what you just said, like, that's absolutely crazy. Hey, you're going to go to school. We're going to teach you a skill set that's going to help you be employed, and we're going to help you get a job.
Yeah.
It's way better than the intern programs that are provided in, quote, higher education, where it's like, hey, we're going to hook you up with one of our fraternity brothers that you can work for free for the summer if you would like to use your 20 hours a week to go do that. And then maybe, if you're good, they'll pay you to fetch their coffee in their mail. Whereas, the trade school, it's like, no, we're going to get you a job with some guys that are going to show you how you can practically use this skill. You'll come here 3 nights a week. You'll make some money.
Yep.
And then set you up to really, in a lot of instances, so many of those guys go independent. Like, they're setting you up to become your own business owners.
Yeah. And they make good money. They have benefits.
Yeah,
it's
even
crazy.
As an apprentice, you have benefits.
And if they get hooked up with David Marr and Right Brain Capital, like get their cash flow going, and they'll be all good to go.
Yeah. If you're disciplined enough with doing it,
okay.
And there's the problem. Some of that ties back in with the arrogance again. I wouldn't say anybody that knew me back then would think, oh, that guy's so arrogant, he's so full of himself.
Yeah.
But there was a level of arrogance to it. So I made it to the first year pretty okay. my girlfriend from high school and I broke up, so I was already kind of on the verge, partying a lot, drinking a lot, and I graduated when I was 17, so I'm 18 at this time.
Yeah.
None of your thought processes are very correct at 18 without proper guidance. Yeah. And
your brain is not developed.
Brain's not.
You're like 7 years away from a fully developed brain at 18.
And not that that's an excuse, but
right.
I made it through the first year. I actually got put with a great company. The guys I worked with were great, because there's a lot of, in all industries, even in like trade school, like when you're an apprentice, the journeyman, they're going to haze you. And I'm not opposed to it, I had good guys that the hazing they did was I would have done it too, but they were teaching me. So my whole first year, every journeyman I had was squared away, knew what they were doing, hazed me the right amount, but also taught me. They built relationships before I knew anything about
that's awesome.
Echelon Front or any of that. And then as I got into my second year, I was still with the same company, and I got moved to a different journeyman again. And he was a guy that just would, what we were doing, we were just running conduit in the top of a warehouse. And he would show up on the job site, open it up, tell me, a second-year apprentice, and his other first-year apprentice, go get the conduit up, and then he would disappear. Looking back, I don't know if that was a test just to see what we would do, or if he really was just lazy. I don't know. I never followed up. My mistake was thinking as a second-year apprentice that I was somebody, went to the boss, and I was like, hey, man, I'm out here making $9 an hour to do this, and this guy's not even here. Like, what's the deal? Like, this doesn't add up. And I learned quickly that they don't care. And they shouldn't have. I'm not saying I was a victim of this. I went in there, ran my mouth, and he was like, cool, you're fired.
No kidding. He fired you over asking about that?
I didn't ask in a proper way. It was a heated way. And so in the union, I'm still in school. You can get picked up by somebody else. And that's, for me, inside I felt like, I was betrayed. I'm doing all this hard work. I'm undercompensated, blah, 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 all that crap. So he was like, no, man, you're gone. And I was like, cool. And then I just quit going. I was a quitter of all quitters. Not because something got hard, just because if I didn't like the parameters around it, it's still that rebellion thing. Like, got it. You're telling me these things. So 2 years in, I was like, cool, I'm out.
How old are you?
Probably 19 at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was the end of my electrician career.
Okay. What's the next step? Are you living at home still at this time, or you moved out?
So I moved out when I was 17. I moved in with my grandparents for a little while. I moved down to Mississippi to my dad's house for a little while.
Okay, cool.
But really, I'm crashing at people's houses all over the place. So I just need a job. So I'm bouncing between warehouse jobs and a lawn care job for a guy I used to work for, just doing what I can.
Cool. All right. What are you doing with your life when you meet your wife?
So in that time period, I was still working for the lawn care company. I got in another relationship. We were pretty serious. We were engaged. I sabotaged that, and this is all stuff my wife knows, obviously.
You're not going to dishonor your wife.
No, she's not going to be like, what? No.
Here's the big reveal, Jen.
And if not, you got between now and Friday morning to have this conversation.
Hey, let me talk to you about something. No. But I say that because it was a downward spiral that was progressing, and as I sabotaged that with my actions, it was almost to where I was like at the bottom of that spiral. Mm-hmm. You have to hit bottom before you can wake up. I was drinking heavy. At that point, I wasn't used to. I would say like I was a good worker, but I would quit if I didn't like these parameters. I got to where like I wasn't making it to work, couldn't hold a job.
That's not good.
I had roommates, and it all went downhill when that broke. I had I think I had no job at the time. I was doing odd and end stuff for whatever I could to help my buddies pay rent on our 3-bedroom apartment we had 4 people in. And my aunt reached out, my mom's sister, and was like, hey, I work for this dental supply company. They need help in the warehouse. And we had like a real come to Jesus talk, like, if you want to apply, I will put my name on you. But like, she knew my track history too, but she took a chance. And this was like right around New Year's. In this time, without going into too much detail, like I had been in such a dark place. Like I cut everybody off, close friends, everything. Like I just disappeared. I didn't talk to my mom for like 2 years. My stepdad, didn't talk to my brother, didn't talk to my dad. I just deep darkness. And just going out, drinking, fighting, whatever.
Yeah.
And I woke up one morning right around New Year's, and I don't remember what triggered it, but I reached out to my mom just to like, hey, you know, I'm sorry, let's talk some.
Yeah.
And ended up going, I hadn't been in church in years. She invited me to their church. We went to church. It was a good sermon. And I remember she texted me because it was around New Year's. She was like, hey, do you have any New Year's resolutions and all that? And even back then I was like, resolutions, whatever. But then I was like, you know what? I would like to, I was a heavy smoker, drinking a lot. And I don't even think I said I wanted to quit. I was like, I'd like to cut back on this and maybe get back in church. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. You know, she wasn't pushy, which this is not disrespect to my mom, but she is default aggressive. So, especially I'm her only son. So there were times back in the day where it was very, I probably needed to be managed to the level I
Oh, for sure. We all did.
But I don't know. It was definitely a God thing because she was just very hands off, which was not. Also, I was grown and had been out of the house for a while. Yeah. But she was like, okay, cool. And so it all kind of linked up around that time. I got this job. I was starting to quit smoking, starting to quit drinking. And I wouldn't say I really like turned my life around and started getting back into church or anything. Although as I'm saying it, I guess I did. It was like a conscious decision, like, hey, I want to start doing better at this. And I get this job, work there a few months, and my wife works in the office there. So we didn't have a break room in there, so we would eat lunch in our cars in the parking lot, and we just started talking. So like I would back my truck in next to her car, and we'd eat and we'd talk, and I'd roll the window up while I smoked, and I'd roll it back down because I was being a gentleman, and and all these things.
Because she doesn't smoke, and she's never smoked.
No, never. So we met at work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How long did you guys date before you got engaged?
We dated about a year. I think it was a year, yeah.
Nice. Did you quit smoking when you guys were dating, or was it like kind of part of the whole, hey, if we're going to get married, you shouldn't be doing this? Did she ever do that?
Never said any of that.
Wow.
She was, she's so laid back and patient. So she went to church. She played piano at a small church. Her dad was a pastor, and she was just like, hey, you want to come to church sometime? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I do, and I don't go to church, so I'll just start visiting there. So
that's awesome.
It all worked out.
Yeah,
it's almost like there was a plan.
Right?
Pretty close.
Coincidence.
Yep.
She never at any point was like, yeah, if we're going to do this, you got to quit smoking, you got to quit drinking, that type of stuff. She never did that.
Yeah.
But I think she knew I really wanted to. Later, she told me, we were on the phone one night, and so when I quit, I got down to where for a while there I was smoking like 6 cigarettes a day, and I just couldn't. I tried to go 5 in a day, and I'd be like, no, give me the 6. So it was a process that I had weaned down from. And I remember I was on the phone with her, and I was like, all right, I just smoked my last cigarette. And she's like, oh, for the day? And I was like, no, I'm done. And she was like, oh, cool, that's great. And then later she was like, I didn't believe that for a heartbeat.
That's cool.
But it was the last one. So
that's awesome. All right, so you guys get married, and Are you still working at the same place? Like, what's kind of going on in your life between, like, hey, we just got married, and when you guys have your first son?
So we get married in 2007. We're still working in the same place. Things are pretty good. She works in the office, so she's one of those office people, so she makes more money than me. But
Pretty dope.
yeah,
Sugar mama.
But we waited. Jake was born in 2009, so we waited 2 years to have kids. So that 2 years was pretty smooth. We had an apartment, working. I tried to go back to school go to school, State Tech or Southwest Community College. I started doing night classes there just for the basics. Again, I didn't really have any vision on what I wanted to do. So at the time, I didn't think it hurt me. I'm just doing the basics. You got to get that out of the way anyway. Had some remedial math I had to do, but I did a year of that, and then there was nothing I really knew I was going to apply it for. So that wasn't the route for me.
Okay, yeah, you recognize. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
There's obviously nothing wrong that people that go to school and get a good college education. There has to be a path and a plan, and there has to be a purpose, right? Like
right.
There has to be an intentional purpose behind doing these things.
Right.
So I'm excited that Aiden got accepted to trade school for welding.
Yeah.
His intent and purpose for what he's going to do, and you did for a little bit, and then, recognize it wasn't for you at that time. And there's nothing wrong with understanding what is for you and what's not for you.
Yeah, and I think that helped me being older, and obviously we were paying out of pocket for me to do that, where it was like, maybe I should think, like, what is my goal in this? Am I going to pay all this and there's nothing I want to do? So I ended up, my brother and I started a lawn business on the side, so just cutting grass. It was cash money.
Nice.
And so we're working, me and my wife still work at the dental place, and then I'd get off work, cut some yards, started growing that, and then I got another opportunity from my family. My uncle knew this guy that was hiring, and he knew I was looking for something a little more than warehouse. Didn't have a lot of skills, but he's just looking out. So he calls me. He's like, hey, you need to call this guy at this time. He's hiring at the plant he works for. I was like, cool, what kind of plant? And he was like, I don't know. But they do really well, and he's a good dude. And I was like, that's not a lot of info, but okay. So I called this guy up, and I was like, yeah, my Uncle Rick told me, call you, I've got a job, but, I'm kind of, again, I had learned not to, it was an interesting job, but like when you're doing that type of, I'm not belittling it, but I wanted to do more than just pull orders in a warehouse, you know? So the guy answers, and he's like, yeah, cool, man. Yeah. Your uncle's a great dude. I'm going to give you the address, come check it out, see if it's something you're into. And I was like, what do y'all do? And they were a machine shop, a medical manufacturer.
Oh, nice.
So I'm looking all that up. I have no clue what any of it is. So I go meet him, tour the shop. There's all this space age CNC machines and manual lathes and mills, and they're making screws and pins and rods and all kind of stuff that go on bones,
fasteners and stuff.
Yeah, all kind of that. It's all in house. They have their own quality control. They're laser etching it, like all this high tech stuff.
You said stuff that goes in bones, so this is like orthopedics.
Yes,
that's rad, dude.
Yeah. So he takes me on this whole tour. He's all excited.
JP's so icked out by
it was always cool when the reps would come out to like do tests on their stuff, and they would bring like bones just to drill in to see. They drill. They do. They drill. Yeah. But anyway, he takes me through all this, and he's like, "What do you think?" And I had started to learn a little bit as I progressed, and I was like, "Man, it looks amazing. I don't have a clue how to do any of that. I've never seen anything like this. I have no machining, like nothing." I said, "But I would learn if you would teach me on the job." And that's normally not a thing from what I've heard from machinists. Any of the people we hired after I worked there, when you check their resume, you're looking for their Machinist 1, Machinist 2, Machinist 3 certificates and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But again, he took a shot and hired me. So that was my big break.
That's cool, dude.
I was finally making more money than my wife.
This is a scoreboard.
Right?
Not that I was tracking, but
Yeah.
Not that I was tracking. It worked out for her in the end, I think. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But no, I started working there just as a CNC machinist. I worked on a Swiss lathe, and I learned at first just learning how to operate it, which is basically checking tolerances on the parts that come off. You don't do any work on the machine, and then they eventually keep teaching you, and just grew from there. And we had our first son Jake in that time period around 2009.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys have Jake. What's the plan now that you have a family? What are you guys talking about? What are you thinking? Like, hey, this is what we have. This is where I want to go in life.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the machinist job, and I wanted to learn more about it. I saw room for growth. When we first got married, we had the typical conversation like, oh, how many kids do you want? And not that I was against kids, but I was like, I don't know, one. And none. Like, I don't know. Like, I hadn't thought about it. I wasn't against it. And she was like, I want 6. And then we had Jake, and he was super easy, but it still quickly turned her number to like 3.
It's amazing how fast that happens.
Yeah. So her goal was, she always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so that was our goal. We had Jake. She wanted 3. We knew we would start trying for our second. We waited 2.5 years before Jarrett was born, but that was the goal. Like, she wanted 3 kids, and she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So my goal was, okay, I need to progress enough to make enough money for her to stay home. We wanted to buy a house, all this stuff. So Jarrett comes along in 2012. I get a promotion at work. This is all kind of in the same time period because I remember it was very stressful. I remember I got a promotion at work to where I was, for the first time, making the amount of money that her and I together were making. And so she was like, aha, this is my chance.
Yeah.
So why not buy a house and then have your wife quit her job so it's all on you? That's not stressful at all. But that's what we did. That was the goal. And it paid off. That's always what she wanted to do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's cool.
I think it's cool when people are able to do that. I think it's also cool when people are in that situation and they don't have the desire that your wife had to be like a stay-at-home mom. They're like, yeah, I'm kind of good with it. And it's like, cool. One of the spouses gets that promotion. They're making it like, hey, I now make what we were making combined. You can quit, and you can do that if you want to. The other option is, hey, you keep working for another year or 2, and we're going to put 100% of your earnings into savings and or an investment. And it's really cool when you hear people do that as well. So,
that would have been smarter. But
well, okay, yeah, hindsight, we sit back and we look at that, but in regards to what your wife wanted and what you guys wanted as a married couple, I don't think that would have been smarter. If you're talking about financial, okay, if we're removing the human desires and the emotions out of it, okay, yeah, that would have been smarter from a financial numbers type of thing. But you also did what was right for you and your wife and what she wanted for her to be for what she wanted as a mother. And
the kid factor is the one that we don't often think about here, right? Because Kirsten and I, so she's the one of the two of us that has the college degree, and actually has a college degree in something that could turn into a very lucrative career for her. And especially when you look at like what pediatric psychologists are making, it's crazy, right? Yeah. But when she got pregnant with Levi, like that changed. And one of the things that she had learned in her pediatric psychology classes was that, the first 3 years of a kid's life is when they learn how to accept love and when they learn what affection looks like and how to build relationships. That outside of that range, that, then things are influenced by a lot of different stuff. But if you have a lot of intentional time in that time period, then that'll change it. When she got pregnant with Levi, she was like, I'm not going into the workforce. Everything that I've been studying has prepared me for this moment to look at this and say, hey, listen, honey, we're going to have to adjust our lifestyle so you can pay off of my college debt, and so that we, do this. And that's the thing when we look at this, like, it's easy to crunch the numbers, but for your boys, the amount of interpersonal relationship development, ability that they have to look at mom and dad in a different light, to accept love and instruction and all of that stuff. She took off in the wheelhouse where that was most important for them,
right?
Which is invaluable.
Yeah, I agree.
100%.
And also it helped. So at the time I was on, they only had two. They had first shift, second shift, but really it was, I went to work at 3:30 and I would get home at like 3:34 in the morning. It was long shifts. So it was beneficial because she could be home. It wasn't like I'm asleep, she wakes up, goes to work.
Yeah.
Like it worked for that time for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
At what point do you transition from that and start, like, when do you have Emily? And then when are you making the shift to what,
Yeah, so somewhere along the way, I went from 160 pounds in high school to 250 pounds of 87% body fat. I don't know.
But you're tall. You carried it well.
I carried it terribly. I was the guy.
I've only seen pictures.
I got to the point where, like, I would be winded playing with the kids in the floor, and just one of those things. Like, I worked, but I ate what I wanted and whatever. So Jennifer found where we bought our house was right around the corner from this big, it's like a furniture warehouse connected with a kickboxing gym or whatever. It's called Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu, but she saw an ad and it was some girl in high heels kicking a bag, and she was like, I'm going to go try this free. And I was like, cool, that looks dumb. Also, I'm 250 pounds and can barely breathe eating my toaster strudel. So, yeah. I'm the one.
Everything looks dumb when you're holding a toaster strudel.
You're like, you want fitness advice? You came to the right place. No.
Fit this pizza in my mouth.
Fit this whole pizza in my mouth, yeah. She would joke, which
I got stretchy pants.
I'm still guilty of this sometimes today, but like if we went to pick up dinner, getting an extra snack to eat for the ride home till we it's a dangerous game. Back in the day it was Sonic. They had these little Frito chili roll-ups.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, she really got into this thing, and it was literally 4 minutes from my house. So she starts doing this stuff, and she's always inviting me like, hey, you should come try it. You should come try it. And I think it was her subtle way of, you're going to die because you're just miserable. And I was miserable.
She did what your uncle did to your grandpa.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I remember and it was toaster strudel. That's why I say that. I'm sitting on a Saturday morning, just crushing my coffee full of sugar and creamer, eating these toaster strudels. The kids are at their grandparents.
Keeping Pillsbury in business.
Yeah. Man, I love those things. Jarrett Bond eats them. It's good for me, right?
Sure.
Yeah, if I ate what... Never mind.
Yeah, I'm sidetracking this.
We love Jarrett Bond.
Anyway, she hits me on a Saturday morning. She's like, hey, the kids aren't here. Just come try this kickboxing class with me. Like, we'll go do this. We'll go grab lunch, and we'll go get the kids. And I was just like, again, haven't drank a bit of water. That's another thing. When I quit drinking a 12-pack of beer a day, I started drinking like a 12-pack of Mountain Dew a day or something. Like, I didn't believe in water. So
I just want to pause and make sure all of our listeners know that Josh, he's going to reiterate this. These are not good things to be doing.
These are terrible things to be doing. If I could tell you how I felt, that's why.
I know we're getting there, but I just
yeah. In all seriousness, like, she could tell I was struggling. I wasn't talking about it, but like, you feel miserable. Just
you're probably like on the couch all the time. No
drive. Like at work. I mean, it's a lot of work.
If you were literally drinking a 12-pack of Mountain Dew a day, But
Probably sometimes.
Yeah, you're talking about like 1,300 grams of sugar.
Yes.
Every day.
Yes.
Killing yourself.
Killing yourself.
Yeah.
Poisoning
And if I
yourself.
wasn't doing that, it's the South. They're sweet tea.
Right.
So,
Yeah, like that's, but no exaggeration, like 1,300 grams of
Yeah.
sugar. That's an insane amount.
yeah. Well, also, you're not sleeping well. I work long hours, transitioning to sleeping partly in the daytime from 4 a.m. till whenever, like, just for the caffeine too. But all that to say, she invited me to this kickboxing class, and I was like, cool, yeah, well, it's something we can do together. And in my mind, like, I knew I was out of shape, but even knowing how bad off I was, I didn't know how bad I was. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I was like, this is Taibo. Like, we're going to get there, and we're going to do some air punches. And
Billy Blanks?
Yeah. And so we go up there, we go in, and as soon as we come in, there's all these heavy bags. And I'm like, oh, there's real bags here. And they kind of take us around, and they have these huge mats for jiu-jitsu, and they have these huge mats for judo. And then when you go in the back, they have a full boxing ring, and they have weights, and they have a full cage back there, an octagon. I was like, this is a real place. Like, it was a fight gym. Like,
that
obviously.
Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu is incredible for training.
But in the corner, they had their cardio boxing, and most of the time it was some of the local MMA fighters would teach. We had some of the jiu-jitsu guys teaching, some of the Muay Thai guys teaching. Anyway, we get started for this class. I fill out the waiver, and they give me some gloves, and they're like, hey, just pace yourself. This is a 45-minute class, get water, whatever. I'm like, yeah, cool, it's going to be fun. So I start getting on the bag, going into the class, doing some bag work, punching stuff feels good. The endorphins are flowing, yes. Heart rate gets up. So I'm going hard. Like I'm throwing bombs on this heavy bag.
Like every
I've got a machine gun.
Red-blooded male does the first time they get to punch a heavy bag.
Yeah, I've got a machine gun punch going on those ones and twos. Just So 9 minutes into this class, Jennifer looks over, and I'm literally hanging onto the bag, white as a sheet, about to pass out.
She's like, "That's my man."
Yeah,
it's my blue
thing. So you talk about desire and capability. That's immediately what goes through my mind. I'm like, well, crap, I can't protect anybody. And again, this is a cardio workout. Mm-hmm. And that led to a lot of thought of, I'm not teaching my young boys right. Like it was like another cycle of events and she knew how I was. Like, I needed to go experience it, and she had been doing it for months. So she was like, yep, it's probably going to break him, but this is what he needs to get it through his head. And so I signed up and decided I needed to start cleaning some things up. So I got into that, and I loved it. Like, bag work is awesome.
It's
I think Muay Thai in general is awesome, but any type of cardio bag work, I think, is a legit workout. And even though you're not learning how to fight, throwing proper strikes on a heavy bag is still going to benefit you.
Well, that's what you guys teach at your Total Fitness kickboxing locations, which I've come and done a class before, and I love it. And Amanda and the kids did it, and we loved it as well. Was you're actually showing people how to punch properly, so that one, they don't hurt themselves in the class, but being able to strike and defend yourself is a skill set that every man and woman should have.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're going out looking for fights, but you should be able to defend yourself. That's why our kids do jiu-jitsu, and they know basic striking, and that's just part of it.
100%.
But the way you guys do it is awesome. It's like, hey, here's how you properly strike. Here's your punches. Here's knees. Here's elbows. And then, bro, you guys make it fun.
Yeah.
And if anybody's listening going, yeah, whatever, that's not a workout, come try one. Come try one. I will join you there. We will do it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible.
It's a legit workout. And I think that's what stuck with me was how much fun I had while I did it. It didn't get boring. It was fun, even though I was dying. But as I continued doing it, so in that gym, I started making friends with people. Blake was the manager at the time. He was a purple belt, and he was kind of injured, but we became friends. We'd play video games when I got off work, and then I'd show up to kickboxing, and he started working on me. He was like, hey, you should come try this jiu-jitsu stuff. And I was like, man, I don't know, man. I see you guys over there. And I was familiar with what jiu-jitsu was from UFC, but not real familiar. I see them over there in their pajamas, and I'm like, I don't know, man.
But it is on the ground, and that sounds like the way you're headed during a kickboxing class anyway. So, yeah.
He started on me probably 2 weeks into it. And as I finally started warming up to it, like I'd go over there and watch him, and I was like, okay, I see what they're doing now. It's not karate.
It's all good. Yeah.
I was like, cool, yeah, I'll try it, but I need to get in shape first, which is what everybody says. Starting 3 months earlier or not, I don't know if it would matter, but I lost like 30 pounds just doing the cardio kickboxing.
And wait, how much time?
And that was 6 months.
6 months losing 30 pounds.
Bro, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think I was 3 months in. I could be wrong on some of these times, but somewhere in there, 3 months in, I was like, I'm going to come try it, but I'm going to lose some weight. And I was losing weight. Now, obviously, I changed my diet. I changed my habits. I started working out other ways outside of it. But then I would go to kickboxing like 4 days a week, 5 days a week.
And it made you want to eat healthier, huh?
Makes you want to eat healthier. Makes you want to drink more water so you can stay hydrated.
Not like your first experience.
Not like my first experience. I drank more water that day than I think I had in years. But all that to say, like it's funny, but I think it was perfect for me to see hands-on what that did for me. So not only did going to try that kickboxing class speak to me, it also plugged me into where I found jiu-jitsu as well. So it was kind of a twofold thing happening. Even though I was doing jiu-jitsu, I would still go do bag work right before, because the boys were in school. So I would go to the noontime class. And so I'd get bag work, and then I'd go do jiu-jitsu 5 days a week, sometimes twice a day, that type of stuff. But all the while I kept doing the kickboxing. And I would see these people come in that never played sports in their life. And then all walks of life, different jobs, different everything. They come in, they start making a difference. And I could see how it really helped people. And it sounds cliche to say, but like when I saw that, I was like, one day I want to start one of these. Like awesome. I know what it did for me personally. I know the relationships I built. And the way they did it there was great. Like it wasn't cookie cutter. I'm not knocking any other gyms. I don't know. I don't know if there's any that do it the way that they did it. And I modeled mine off of how they did it. Yeah. And even though it's a group workout class, there's a culture in the gym to how the members interact, how the instructors interact with them. And I was like, okay, one day I want to be able to do something like this. Yeah. Like I didn't know in what capacity. Would this be a side thing? Would I just teach some? Would I open one? But I knew then I wanted to do something. But I knew it was going to take a while, so I didn't know what all that would take. So it was probably, I don't know, I probably went through. So I started teaching there, and still doing jiu-jitsu and still doing kickboxing. So I probably did that for a couple years before I really started thinking hard about, I kind of want to open one of these.
That's cool.
Yeah. And that's awesome. That was probably when I really got serious about wanting to open it. I would say it was 2017.
Yeah. So between that and 2017, what was jiu-jitsu like for you?
Man, it was amazing. The daytime class that I started at was just a bunch of injured dudes that worked weird schedules that just kind of met up. It was at first it wasn't even a sanctioned class, and we had this purple belt in Blake that was.
I love Blake.
He was incredible. He was and he was a footlock genius. Like
you guys followed a lot of Rolly Delgado stuff. Huh?
Yes, yeah. That's those guys, and those guys from Delgado would come over and just cross train.
Bryce Mitchell.
Yeah, Bryce Mitchell back in the day.
Bryce Mitchell fights in the UFC. Used to come cross train, and actually one of my. I can't remember which amateur fight it was, but I fought on the same card as Bryce Mitchell.
Yeah,
I have that.
You
poster,
have the poster. You
and
said
you
it.
Were at that fight show also.
Yeah.
So that was like back in the day. Bryce Mitchell's a professional MMA fighter. I was fighting amateur. That's funny. Yeah, I think I
On
sent
the
a
same
picture
card.
Yeah.
on the
Cool.
same card. Like
Yeah.
him and I are on the poster with all the other fighters.
Yeah.
And you were at that fight, and you were really big. I remember, like you were as a white belt. Not a lot of white belts
No.
are playing the leg lock foot game.
No.
Josh
No.
snatching those up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tournaments and stuff that like white belts can't do that.
Straight ankle is pretty much.
There
all
is
you
a
can do.
reason why.
Yeah,
I
oh,
can
yeah, oh, yeah.
only
You know
do
what?
straight ankle lock.
Yeah,
Like,
Isaac and I actually talk about this on I think episode 101 of Jesus in Jiu-Jitsu is how much as a white belt you don't realize what deep water you're in.
Yes.
Because you don't know, like, if somebody gets you in certain kind of like toe holds or ankle locks and things like that, you're like, oh, I'm just going to spin out of this.
You spin the wrong way.
Snap.
Yeah, well, not only that, like you can shred your knee and all kinds of stuff, which is why it's so important to have good training partners, and particularly like the black belts and the brown belts that we train with, the double fives.
Yeah.
They're like, I know a couple of them have put their arms on me, and they're like, that's what it was, and then they've just like let me go.
they call it catch and release.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I'm going
that's
to
it.
hold you while I disengage this so you don't blow your own
Yeah,
knee
that's
out.
it. And I like I got in one. I don't know. This had to have been several weeks ago, and I felt I was like, "That was a was that? Did you just have me?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah." I was like, "You just let it go." And they're like, "I'm just working on the flow. You just keep doing what you're doing." I'm like, "Cool, thanks, Dad."
Awesome.
Right. Right.
Dad.
Yeah, thanks for not hurting me.
Well, and I hated them when we started. I wouldn't say I hated them, but like, so Blake, it eventually became an actual like, and I don't mean unsanctioned, like it actually became a class time on the schedule.
It was,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, it
And
wasn't
when
on the
you're saying
schedule.
unsanctioned, it just was not on the schedule.
Yeah.
But that's what's cool about that gym.
Yeah.
Dave and all those guys, like, hey, if you guys want to come train
Yeah.
and the doors are unlocked, come train.
Yeah.
And that's what was the same on the backside. I call the backside of the house
Yeah.
because that's where all the MMA fighters were. And we would be back there. And there's times like, be training. And there's no class, but you're back there training
Yeah.
because it worked for your schedule. It's
Yeah.
like either you put
can
in the
come,
work
can
or
come,
you
can
don't.
come. Yeah. I think that's how they finally asked him, because they saw more and more people with schedules. They'd be like, well, I can come these days during the day and knock it out. And they were like, well, let's just make it a class on the schedule. Anyway. But Blake was cool because I didn't love them at first. But just those guys drilling, I knew enough about jiu-jitsu that I knew, well, at least if I know them, I can defend them.
Mm-hmm.
And they never like put me in danger or anything. They were always real good with them, because there are those gyms out there where, you know, especially I wouldn't say the leg lock craze is over, but there was a little while there where it was just like it was super wild. And nobody was ever in danger. I mean, it can be a dangerous position, but yeah, they were throwing all that on me from day one, which again, like Lucas said, I did not know what to do. So I would just sit there. Like, I'm not going to spin out. And through the defense is how I started learning the counters and the offense and stuff. So that was a great time. That as that class grew and people started coming through there, being able to, because I could never train at night because I worked.
Yeah.
So as seeing that grow, it got to where it got really big. We'd have multiple black belts that would show up. They would do a hard. I think it was 11 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah. It was 11 o'clock. And
yeah.
Jen supported you training jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, 100%. She would come up there, depending on what when the boys were in school, she would come do her kickboxing. Sometimes she would stay and watch. That's why I like Formiga's gym so much too, because of the family environment to it. And even though Jen didn't train, like, she knew all the people I trained with just because she'd be up there.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I would always, again, too gung-ho, like, you need to come try it. And she wasn't super interested, but one of the girls that trained there one day was like, hey, come try class with me. And she did it, and she didn't like it, but she actually tried it.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. Yeah, I think that gym definitely did it well. Formiga, Double Five, they do it unlike any other gym.
Yep.
There's a lot of gyms that do it well.
Yeah.
I haven't seen one that does it like Double Five does.
No.
And I don't know what exactly it is. And this is obviously not a bad thing to any of the other gyms that we've ever seen and or been a part of, because all the ones I've been a part of have been good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of gyms are missing that though.
Yeah.
Because if you can make your gym, and it doesn't matter, you can also have awesome bad, to the bone fighters and competitors there. But if you're not intentionally making it a family atmosphere,
correct,
you are going to limit your growth.
Yeah.
No doubt.
There's
no question about it.
It goes back to that culture thing.
100%.
That's
the majority of the people that can afford to pay for jiu-jitsu are going to be individuals that have families.
All right.
And then, you get the mom or the dad in jiu-jitsu, you get the kids. You get the kids in jiu-jitsu, you get the mom or dad.
Right.
If you do it right. And if you don't get them all, it doesn't matter, but you have a family, you have a culture.
Correct.
There are times that, my wife doesn't train anymore. Hopefully she would like to be healthy enough this year to start training again. But she comes up there to see your wife,
right,
and the other wives,
right,
and the other moms, and to see Elisa and hang out. Like, that's just part of the culture that Double Five has, and I think it's incredible. So Jen was super supportive of your training. What was jiu-jitsu competition like? What was your first tournament like? Lead us through that.
I have all kinds of questions about this.
Okay.
Or curiosities about this.
Why would that be, Lucas?
No good reason.
So our listeners,
just because I want to know about
if
my
they
friends'
are listening on Friday morning,
right?
If they are listening on Friday morning, what is Lucas doing?
Lucas tomorrow is coming in 5th place in a division of 4
people. He's going to have his hand raised on the podium. How cool would that be? When you're on the podium.
Did you just say 5th place in a group of 4 people?
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry. I should have skipped it.
I appreciate you doing the math on that, Josh.
No. I'm slow.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when you're on the podium,
yes,
and you get that,
if somebody drops out and I make it on the podium,
dude,
it will be.
Can we just take these out and beat on him right now? And
we
you
can.
could, but I won't edit it out. That's all.
Have you heard any of my stories so far?
All I'm going to say is that this will just show how purple belts just take advantage of white belts even off the mats.
Sometimes for their own good.
Just perpetuating these negative stereotypes about mid-level belts that just are rude.
It's for their own good.
Yeah.
So what was your first competition
We'll get to purple belts and stripes in a little bit later. But what was your first jiu-jitsu tournament like?
So
I love that story.
I hate that story. No, it's a funny story. Yeah, that was not cool.
I like the way that target moved.
Like I was going to drop
new target acquired. Perfect.
I was going to drop some serious beneficial knowledge, but now, no.
Yeah.
So my first tournament, I want to say I was 6 months in. I never really had a drive to compete, but I do know our coaches there were always like, "Hey, if you really want to test your skills, go roll against somebody you don't roll against six days a week." And I was like, "Cool, that sounds cool." I didn't really know the point system. Honestly, I still don't really know the point system. I know the main basic ones, but
I didn't know there were points until a couple of weeks ago when a guy went north-south on me, and he was like moving around. I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I swept him, and then he was like, "You got to move." I was like, "Why do I have to move? I'm in good position right here. I'm feeling comfortable." And he's like, "Well, you're not going to get any points." I was like, I don't know what that means. He's like, "Yeah, you gotta. If you don't move, then they don't give you points for not moving." I was like, "So
I can't wait for Saturday."
So I've got to like. So I literally was like, "So all that breakdance and stuff you were doing on my face a second ago, that was for points." And he's like, "Yeah, you got to do that."
Second control to north south to the other side, neon belly mount. Oh, they re-guarded. Oh, I passed guard right back to side control. People will let people re-guard to half guard just so that they can pass guard, get side control again, just to keep racking up points.
Yeah. Which that's not my style.
No, but
I didn't even know that was a thing.
But points are a thing. So when
we'll let you finish. Sorry.
My first
offline. That's why I'm coming in 5th out of 4.
No. So yours will be like mine. I was 6 months probably into jiu-jitsu. Memphis did not have a ton of tournaments that would come through there, so we went to Nashville. So 3.5 hour drive.
Oh, you don't have to. Your drive's short.
Yeah. So we go to Nashville.
This is my attention span.
Clearly. But a bunch of the guys are going, and so I sign up, and I get there, and it's a Naga tournament. So say what you will, like they're putting on tournaments. I don't have anything against it. Now, you might see some things there, but
you make it sound like it's a motorcycle. Like you might see some stuff.
You might.
Yeah.
You might.
He's not far off.
Right.
Okay.
But whatever it is, and I only signed up for gi. So that was one thing. So even though we did a lot of footlocks and leg attacks, like in the gym, we would just do them in the gi. At that time, I hadn't technically done no gi. We just take our gi top off and we'd start doing the stuff. So I did know enough to know, like, I can't go in there. And I at 6 months in, I probably couldn't have thrown any solid leg attacks anyway. But I'm just saying that. So I went in as a white belt in the gi, leave early in the morning, drive over to Nashville. I get there. I'm supporting everybody else. Haven't eaten anything. My time to go is like in the afternoon. It gets pushed back. It gets delayed. That's one thing I'll say. It's not the most on time. World League is pretty good for on time. I want to give them a good nod for that.
Yes.
Excited. I haven't done a Naga in a long time, but back then it was very poorly structured in the time part of it. But there was always a lot of competitors, so that was a good thing. So I decide I'm going to eat a cheeseburger.
My dude.
Yeah, so I had a cheeseburger.
Got to stay fueled.
And then I get told like 30 minutes later it's time to go. So I have this greasy stadium cheeseburger lodged in me. These are not excuses on why I lost. I'll get to that point.
You're just throwing premium fuel in a sports car.
So,
that's all that happened right there.
So I go down there, get all ready to go. We start, and the adrenaline dump was real. And again, like, we roll a lot. So my first time, like, the adrenaline dump was pretty real. Like, even like standing in the bullpen and going out there, I'd never really felt like that before. 'Cause like even in sports, again, I wasn't any superstar. I was mid-range. Like, so there was never any, like, for me, there was never any pressure on any of that. And I didn't feel pressure, but like, it was my first time rolling against somebody that wasn't either from my gym or cross-training in my gym. So like the butterflies got in there and I was like, wow, this is weird. And then the cheeseburger, and they're like, yeah, it's real weird. And we go out there and slap hands, grab grips, and like that adrenaline dumped. And I just remember feeling like I felt better, but I felt super fatigued all of a sudden just with that dump. All that to say, I did not do a good job of studying points. So I just was going to go in it with the idea of I'm going to roll like I roll at the gym. And when you win at the gym, not that we keep track of wins, but you get a submission, you reset, you keep going. So I was like, well, I'm going to do my best to get a submission. And I knew there were points, but I was like, in my quest to get these submissions, I will get points or I won't get points. And that's about what I put thought into. Nice. So I'm out there. Again, as a 6-month white belt, you know how many submissions you have in your tool belt.
Both of them.
You're right. And I knew enough, like, hey, don't mess with the legs. So we go out there, and somehow, like, he pulls guard, I pass guard, I sweep him, whatever the points add up to. I ending up with like a minute left in top side control, and I'm up like 12-3. And I have no clue how, but I had done the right things to get the points. I'm frustrated because none of my...
means that every time you went to a position, you settled. You were at least mindful enough to settle for, what, 3 seconds to get the points?
Yeah. And I don't even know if I was mindful enough or if I was just trying to think of what the next thing I'm supposed to do to set up this submission attempt.
Oh my gosh, I'm actually here. What do I do next?
I'm here. How do I get his arm for a key lock, you know? And none of my submission attempts were, because this guy's, I mean, they break it down, and we're probably the same level. So it's not like none of it was easy. Somehow I'm up like 12-3, 10-3, I don't know, something like that. And I look over, and the girl coaching me, she's an upper belt at the gym. She's like, just stay there. Hold it. You know, the clock's under a minute. I'm up, and I'm like, just stay here? Like, just sit here and ride the clock? I'm going to... So
Girl, I just had a cheeseburger. I'm ready for this.
41-year-old me would have stayed there unless the opportunity... I would not have rushed anything, I'll say that.
Yeah. You would have been patient.
I would have been patient. If something comes up, cool. If not, I'm cool to... In a tournament...
Yeah.
But I was like,
play to win, man.
I got time, and I'm gonna go for this arm bar. I can barely get up and spin and hit it in class, but I think I can get it right here in this tournament with this cheeseburger in me, with this adrenaline dump. I go for it, miss. He comes on top, chokes me, I lose. And the girl coaching me just as I tapped. It was legit. Like, he did what he was supposed to. As I tapped, I look up. She's like, and walks off. Like,
that's awesome. Great coaching, by the way. I know you're being polite to her, but as a coach, don't ever do that.
No. But hindsight, I understand. And we talked after. Like, there was no withdrawal there. It probably wasn't good optics for anyone else. Mm-hmm. I know how I need to be coached, and if my coach is upset with me, I should probably see it, and I'm fine with that.
Okay. I'm the same way.
It's the same.
But I don't think it's good coaching.
I don't either, but the conversation after,
Cool. I had a good conversation after. That's all that matters.
And I kind of attribute that to, do you remember, I'm going to use one of Aiden's matches where he got footlocked. Mm-hmm. And Brent was coaching him.
Yeah.
And Brent's a great coach. And he didn't throw up his hands or walk off or anything. But their conversation right after, while I was standing there, he goes, well, you did absolutely none of the things I told you to do. And that's how I attribute it. Like, when I heard that, I immediately went back to my first tournament. I was like, I literally did the opposite of what my coach told me to do. So I'm going to give them a little grace. So there's a level of that there.
You are correct.
Yep. I'm really looking forward to my coach saying things that I don't know what they mean. That's my number one. That's the thing that I anticipate is probably going to happen, is that I'm going to get an instruction that I actually don't know what it means, and that will be the teachable moment for me. So they're going to be like, I told you to do this, and I'm just going to be like, okay.
Well, unless Aiden has a match going on
draw for me
at the same time.
This thing that you're asking me to do?
Unless Aiden has a match going on at the same time, I'll probably be coaching you with Brent, helping reinforce what Brent's telling you, or Josh, or Mike Brown. So
what you guys should do is one of you should say the thing, and the other one should have a whiteboard and just draw the picture. Or I can hold position and kind of shuffle around
Brent
to be able to see the board,
and me and him will act it out real quick, like
right next,
and then we'll all get escorted out.
It's like interpretive dance.
That would be it. Yeah.
So you have the first tournament, you lose.
First tournament.
Do you have any other matches other than that one, or no? It was a single elimination?
Single elimination on that one.
That's why I like Jiu-Jitsu World League. Guaranteed 2 matches.
You get 2, especially at lower belts when you just want to get reps. Mm-hmm. Still got bronze for that tournament, though.
Yeah, participation trophy. Let's go.
Threw that in the trash when I left. And again,
my man.
It's funny that he says that, and both of you are like, "Oh, you're gonna get your hand raised, get hardware. You'll like it." And then Josh threw it in the trash. You're like, "That's what I'm talking about."
No, we're saying you're gonna get it because you're gonna win. Because you're gonna win. To the top. Win your way to the top.
So write it down. So that was it. That was it. Supported the rest of the team. Again, it's a jiu-jitsu tournament. Like, there's a level of wanting to be better, but also all right, well, we'll go work on some more stuff. Yeah. Obviously, I'm 6 months in, everything needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
So it was overall a good experience.
That's awesome. Okay, so you had an overall good experience. Do you keep competing? Does it up your training? How does this affect your jiu-jitsu training?
Yeah, I would say probably from there on, I was already training pretty heavy, but I got to where I was going 5 days a week, and then I started adding Saturdays. So I'm literally pretty much training every day but Sunday, picking up the pace, and I felt like as a white belt I was progressing. Again, I'm envious, and not in a bad way, of the people that just have a high jiu-jitsu IQ and take to it easily and all of these things. That's not me. So I put in a lot of work 6 days a week, and it made me feel like I was progressing at about what an average white belt should progress at, and I was fine with that. I competed I competed a good bit. I wouldn't say like I was a competitor. Again, we're doing Nagas and AGFs and smaller ones. Nothing big ever came through Memphis. And again, I have a family and I work, so I wasn't really traveling too far out. We'd run over to Arkansas for a tournament. We'd run over to, there'd be some in Mississippi.
Yeah.
But I went and did another white belt. And I think I did 4 white belt tournaments, and each one like got a little bit better. Like I got a win at the second one, and then lost twice, and then got silver at the third. And I think finally by like the third or fourth one, I actually got gold.
Nice.
And then
did you get your blue belt after that?
Nope.
No.
Soon after that, though, so they tricked me. So our gym did stripes back then,
Nice.
and I had 3 stripes and 1 white belt, and I showed up for the promotion night just to support everybody because I was like, "There's no way, like I only have 3 stripes, like no factor." And they promoted me from 3 stripe to blue belt. And
Nice.
I was like, "No, I don't want this." But that one didn't feel as bad as when I got my purple. Like I was like, okay, I have at least shown progression, and that I've always said like that's the only belt I ever wanted was blue belt, not for anything other than me personally to be like, I'm actually taking this seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean that it bad against any white belts, and I've never been like chasing a belt, but getting from white to blue for me was always like, I'm really doing jiu-jitsu now, and I've put in the time. Even though I don't know if I deserve this blue belt, I'm not just a white belt.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does. That's awesome. It's cool to know that you worked hard for something.
yeah, and I felt like I put in the work, even though when they called my name and I had to go through the gauntlet, I was like, I shouldn't be here yet. Like, I'm not beating any of the blue belts in the gym.
What year did you get your blue belt?
So that would have been, I'll have to run it back. I got my purple belt in 2018, so I got my blue belt maybe 2015.
Yeah, that was towards the end of me fighting.
Yeah.
And so we were white belts together.
Yeah, we were white belts together. Yeah.
White belt mafia together.
I remember the first day you came in to a daytime class, and I had just gotten. I was always like, for a while, I was the newest guy. So like, I'm the lowest man, white belt on. There's other white belts, but they've been training longer, so they're more advanced. So again, it's not an ego thing, but anytime some new person walks through the door, you're like, I might actually get to try something on offense.
Yeah.
So JP walks through the door. He's got a white belt. He can barely tie his belt.
That's not true.
No, that's not true.
I was like, I've always known how to tie a belt.
I'm just kidding. But no, he,
But it's like a brand new belt because I never trained in the gi.
never trained in the gi. And I don't know if at that time early on I had even seen you in the back or anything.
Probably
I
no,
think that was
because
our...
no, because I always trained in the evening.
Right.
Because that's when the
Oh, that's
fight
right.
team
That's
trained
right. Yeah.
was in the evenings. So
JP comes through, and I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to crush this white belt. It was like, hey, here's a newer guy. He doesn't have any stripes on his belt. Like, I might actually get to do something. And we pair up. I think we drilled together. It just worked out. And then when it was time to roll, we rolled. And you got on top of me, and I couldn't sweep you. And I was like, this guy's not a white belt.
Liar.
And then I find out he does MMA in the back, and he's been training for years, and he never puts on the gi. And
So is this like the genesis of y'all's relationship and friendship starting?
probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we hit
it
up
had
pretty
to
good.
have been.
Yeah.
Because then after that, there was more noon classes, and then Josh and other guys from just the jiu-jitsu side, it was cool. Like the gym was cool when it came to like support.
Yeah.
And if there was fighters fighting, like people would come, like even like just jiu-jitsu practitioners that never trained or never trained the MMA side, or never did no gi with us or whatnot. It was pretty cool.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of got in there just to be a body to throw around. We had a guy that was Jaleel. Same thing happened with him. He came out in a gi just to get his grappling reps for his fight, and I was like, what the heck? Who is this guy?
Yeah. Jaleel is he's still fighting Bellator.
Yeah.
Incredible athlete. Just stupid talent. He's actually one of the guys, one time I called him Whiskey Tango. And he's like, I was like, what does that mean? I'm like, you're wasted talent. Because he wasn't putting in the work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, if I had a quarter of your athletic ability, with my mindset from the SEAL teams in life, I was like, I would be in the UFC. But I don't have his athletic ability. So I quickly realized when I was fighting MMA, that was never going to be the case. But Jalil, he was crazy, man. You know how he got his first MMA fight? He was sitting in the crowd watching fights. And they had a fighter back out. You know how Tennessee and Mississippi used to do it back in the day. There wasn't a lot of regulations that they were following for MMA. And
you're fighting in a flea market, dog.
You saw some things.
Yeah.
You saw
we saw some things.
You're literally fighting in a flea market or a furniture market or on a stage at a concert venue.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody really knew there was fights going on there or not. But Jalil was at a fight just watching, and his wrestling coach was there cornering somebody, I believe. I believe this is a story, but I don't know who communicated to him, but I know he was there watching. And they needed a fight, and so he was like, he stepped in there.
Yeah,
and, he had to borrow somebody's cup and shorts and a mouthpiece to fight because he didn't have any of it.
Ew.
And so he borrowed the stuff and beat the crap out of some dude. Really good wrestler. Unreal wrestler. And so his wrestling coach, I believe it was his wrestling coach that was there, Rod. Remember Rod?
Yeah.
He got him into it, and then now amateur. I think he was undefeated amateur.
Yeah.
And then he was undefeated pro for a long time until his 9th or 10th fight, I believe. And he still fights.
Still fights, yeah.
But so we'd have those guys there, and Josh and I. That's where our friendship blossomed.
Yeah. We'd go grab lunch every now and then, and just kind of went from there.
So what was the for you the transition to move to Texas?
So
I know it was business related, but walk me through that decision making process that you had internally, and then how did you express it to your wife to get buy-in? That's a big move, right? She's a small town girl like my wife.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you're saying, hey, we're going to move to Texas.
Yeah.
With our 3 young kids.
Were y'all still going to her dad's church at the time?
Yep.
Oh, dude, that's a massive move.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll get there. I probably could have done it better, but so all this while I'm training, competing at white belt, I compete some at blue belt. I'm also the guys that own that gym, we know them. They train with us. I see what they're doing. They decide they're going to open other locations of just kickboxing. Well, at one point they opened a location on the other side of town in Midtown that had jiu-jitsu and the kickboxing. It started doing well, so then they started floating the idea, well, we'll just try a kickboxing only model in East Memphis, so a third location in Memphis, and the kickboxing kind of took off. It was stood up on its own. And I'm not involved, but I'm just seeing the process as it's going. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm still doing cardio kickboxing for workouts in between with jiu-jitsu and still have that goal because I know how much it helped me. And they decide it was like a trial. I remember they were talking about it, and they're like, we're going to open a kickboxing only location an hour outside of Memphis in Jackson, Tennessee, and we're going to see how it does. And it did well, and that kind of just solidified. I was like, okay, I've seen them open all these locations. It can be a viable business on its own. Yeah. Getting to teach there and see, Blake would show me the ins and outs of, the system behind it. I was like, this could be a viable business, not just a side thing. But that's when my wheels got turning, okay, they've already opened up 4 in Memphis. I've got to find somewhere else to open one. So I just started looking, and I mentioned it to Jennifer, and she was on board even though there was nothing set in stone. Because I had DFW on the map, I had Austin on the map. There was a spot in Kentucky I was going to look at. I have a cousin that lives in Albuquerque, and I've always liked it out that way, so that was also a possibility. And then I knew I just had to start making these trips out to these areas just to see what it's like. Because, again, I've never been a lot of places. I'd been out west. I loved it, but that was more in the wilderness. Like you need to be in the city to see where you're going to open a business, to know if it's even viable. So that's kind of how that ball got rolling right there. And I remember when you moved, you're like, cool, man, I'll see you out in Dallas eventually. And I was like, man, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. It's on my list. But I always remember that. She's like, yeah, I'll see you out in Dallas later. I was like, oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Weird.
That's weird.
And then, because you moved what month?
January.
Yeah. And then it was, I want to say April.
Yeah.
I texted you and I was like, hey, I'm coming to Dallas just to look at spots. Now, I wasn't fully decided, but I had been looking at other places, and now it was time to go to Dallas. And I was like, I'm just going to go drive around, see what areas I like, just see. So hit you up, and I loved it. Like it was demographically, the income, like the way it was laid out. I was like, man, I could literally pick anywhere and find a great spot to put a gym. So I think that was April, maybe. It's somewhere in that time period, because we started the process. No, it had to be a little sooner. It had to be March, because then we started the process, and then I came back a couple more times to find the locations, and we found our first location, signed the lease, started the build out, and I moved my family in July of 18.
Yep.
I was still working, so I would drive to Memphis, work all week, get off work super late Friday night, early morning, drive all the way to Dallas. I'd be here Saturday, Sunday, leave Monday, drive, and go straight to work, because I'd have to be there in the afternoon, and did that for 5 or 6 weeks.
Bro,
every weekend.
That's unreal.
Until it got to the point where, like, okay, now I need to, the build out's almost done. I need to focus on marketing and building it up. And that's when I finally quit and went all in with the first one.
Dude, that's unreal. But that's what it takes to build and establish a business.
Yeah. It wasn't just, cool, I'm going to go do this, and then it happens, and then the people come, like, you got bills to pay. Mm-hmm. Also, the money you're putting into the business. Like,
so how much time would you say, while you're working your regular full-time job, were you putting into the business before the business started producing income?
Working time, just in general, like even if it's
a couple hours a day?
While I was in Memphis working full-time? Oh, 100%. Probably, because you could do some of that stuff while you're at work, on break, whatever. So
they know that now.
I had a very good working relationship with my boss there. But I wouldn't be doing things, because it's overnight. It's not like I'm reaching out to people or anything like that.
You're not doing marketing calls?
No, it's 12 a.m. But it's planning thing. It's ordering things. It's getting lists together what you need. So, because in that phase, I wasn't actually actively reaching out to the community, because we weren't to that point yet. But in that phase, before I moved, I was probably still, so I'd work 12-hour shift, and I was probably still putting 4 or 5 hours a day just in the planning process to it.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That greatly shifts once I quit my job and came out, and it was all just focused on the business, because then it goes to, you're out all day doing stuff, and then you're doing your computer stuff, and then you're planning your stuff, and you're doing 16 hours a day spent on the business, 17 hours a day. I mean, enough to eat with the family, maybe go train, but honestly, all that wasn't a priority to me at the time, so all that stopped, and you're just all in. So, like, you're eat, breathe, sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, because you want it to grow. Like, you've put all this money into it. There's no way you can't just drop this money into it, open this thing, and hope people show up.
So with that type of intentionality needed to build the business while also being present with your family, what systems would you use to organize your day? Were you pen and paper calendar? Did you use your phone? Technology? Was there hybrid? Like, what did you do to keep you organized and intentional? Because with that, I mean, you have to make the most of every moment you're awake.
So I use my phone a lot and pen and paper at the time.
Hybrid.
I didn't really keep a calendar. Now, on the flip side of that, our software system for our prospects that come through the gym, it puts them in a calendar as they schedule and stuff. So it was structured in a way like if I needed to follow up with people that were coming, it was calendared out that way. But as far as the things I needed to get done, especially in the build-out phase, like getting inspections, getting permits, getting HVAC guys in there, all that stuff, I was pen and paper and then some on my phone.
Nice. Any lessons that you learned that you feel our listeners should, receive in regards to building the business? Or if you were to do it over again, what would you change?
So lessons learned, I think, like I went in with a healthy ambition and was prepared to put in the work. I will say this, so my brother moved out here with me, and I don't know if we would have had the success we had right out of the gate without his support.
Dude.
Because there's just little things you don't think about along the way, and having that extra set of eyes, his brain behind it. Like he got into kickboxing at the gym down in South Haven. There was a location as well, and he started teaching down there, and he loved it, and he knew what I was doing, and he wanted to come support and be a part of it, and it was the both of us that built it. So I wouldn't say I bit off more than I could chew, but I didn't plan the amount of load I had, but my brother was there to help carry it. So it worked out okay. I think you have to plan for all contingencies, start to finish. And as well as I planned, I kind of got lucky. And we wouldn't be there without him. So it was all meant to be, and I'm grateful for that. I think for me also the mindset going into it had to be all in, because like I'm literally quitting my job, moving my family, and I think a lot of people do, we were laughing about it, but a lot of people have the idea of like, I've got this great idea, it'll make money, but they don't want to put any effort into it. Or minimal effort, and they just expect that it's going to blow up overnight, and it's just not the case. No matter what it is, whether you're selling something, whether you're training someone, like you need to plan to the point. I remember when I was starting, everybody was like, you're not going to make a profit for 3 years. I think that's the average before.
Yeah, it's like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. So that's a heavy pill to swallow. So you have to put things in place to prepare for that.
Yeah.
We didn't take out any loans to open it. So all the equipment we bought, and it was, I think part of that though is knowing like, hey, I'm living off of what I have until the business starts making profit. Like we need to get going.
Yeah.
And I just can't stress that enough. I think so many people just aren't, not that they're not capable, they're not willing to put in the work to see something through to the finish.
Interesting.
Yeah. JP's talked about this idea of the good idea fairy, right? And it's one of those things where somebody's like, oh, I have this great idea. And then they tell it to, a buddy of theirs who runs a successful business. And they sit down and they're like, oh, cool. What are you going to do with it? I told you. I would like 15% of whatever you do with this great idea that I came up with. And I wonder how much of that is a product of the influencer culture from social media.
Yeah.
That, if
100%.
Yeah, if you're consistently coming up with good ideas, you're putting your face in front of somebody, then you get enough follows, and then people will do it. And so they're like, oh, you know what? I found this. I improved upon this idea. I'm going to give it to somebody else, and then that's going to grow it. When the reality is that so many of those things that we see, and somebody's like, oh, well, here, use my 10-step program. Well, all they're selling is the program. The story that they told you is absolute garbage.
Right.
Because they told a story to get your attention, not because there's anything there. And when push comes to shove, doing the work becomes really difficult. And that becomes the deterrent, is the difficulty in getting over those things when you realize you have to be dependent upon you for something.
Well, and I think even so where we're at now, we have a good team in place. It doesn't mean it's not work, but you're absolutely right. The influencer thing, people see these lifestyles and they're like, that's what I want. I just want to, build this thing and then I'll just sit back and it'll run. And it's not the case on the front end for a long time. Yep. And even when you do and you put the right team in place, it's work building your team. And even then you're still not hands off on it. Like the idea that you want to be an entrepreneur and go to work so you can not work anymore, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. We've had to do this with volunteer vetting, and it's this. It sounds really, really harsh, especially from a church perspective. But if somebody tells me like, hey, you know what? I've got some time. I want to volunteer. I really feel like I want to take over this area. I'll ask them like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, currently nothing. Like, so what are you doing during the day? Well, I was a full-time student and now I'm doing nothing. You're not going to get put in charge of anything. Yeah. Because if you're currently doing nothing, then that means that whenever you get this responsibility, you're going to continue to do nothing, but now you're going to be doing nothing with this title and expectation that we have on you. Like, you can come and make this your project for the next 6 weeks, and then we'll talk about it.
Right.
And 3 weeks into it, it's over. Like, they stop showing up.
Yeah.
And those things seem harsh, but they save us from, it's those, you've said this before, like contracts save relationships. That like, hey, you know what? Before we say yes to everything you're wanting to do, show up here for 3 to 6, or show up here for 6 to 8 weeks. We'll have a regularly scheduled time for you to show up to start some volunteer stuff. And if you don't make it to the end of that time, we'll just know this wasn't a good fit. And there's a book, the one Ethan and I were talking about, Spiritual Leadership, when Ethan May was on the show. One of the things it talks about in there is to ask your busiest people for help, because they understand what the value of time is. Mm-hmm. A person that does nothing will continue to do nothing except for now add frustration. And I think that's where a lot of young entrepreneurs, or a lot of young aspiring entrepreneurs, they get into that mode. Like, I'm doing nothing right now, but I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, and so I know that all I have to do is work for 4 hours, and then I'll be able to coast and make passive income. There's no such thing as passive income.
No.
Well, I think for me too, it was aligning what I know now what my mission is, but like the fulfillment that comes from it. So it was clear with Total Fitness Kickboxing, it had helped me. I wanted to help other people and then also make a living doing it. But even the other outlets past that, you're gonna work for it if you believe in it. So I think having your ideals lined up with what you're putting your effort, your passion into is a huge deal. At least it was for me, because I had a great job where I was at, and I don't have any complaints. I had good working relationships. I wouldn't say I would have been unhappy staying there, but knowing my personality, how I'm wired, what I wanted to do, being able to put all that effort into someone else's company, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. What do they call that? Intrapreneurs instead of entrepreneurs?
Oh, yeah. We need that.
Yeah. For me, if I could take all of that effort and put into something I believed in and to build, and then build it up to whatever you want it to be, as long as it stayed in line with my mission, my passion, and my purpose, like I'm getting fulfillment from it, I'm more likely for me to keep putting all my effort into it. And then as you build the team out, like, I don't know how far we want to go ahead, but it opened up other doors to me to where I had room to do things.
Yeah, and that's actually the next thing I want to talk about. I was going to ask you is like, you have this mindset towards business in your marriage, and you're very intentional with what you do, and so the very first time we had a roll call, and it was in September 2018, and we did not anticipate how much volunteers we were actually going to need for that, and we realized it like the day before morning of, and I sent a text message out to a bunch of guys, and they all rallied, and Josh was one of them. And then since then there was, opportunities with the FTXs, I think Josh was actually like, hey, if you ever need help, let me know. I was like, okay, cool, awesome. And then it came a point where we needed help with an FTX with role players, because we knew the program was going to be growing and expanding, and I was having different people come out to help as role players. And, Josh took it very serious, was very attentive, was sitting there listening, taking notes during all the debriefs, like wasn't messing around, wasn't playing with his gear, wasn't distracted. And those are the things that Cody and myself and other instructors look at.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you're an adult coming out to be a part of a great organization. Mm-hmm. We're going to see what you do. What are your natural, and it's also, this is an environment where we know most people are going to be on their best behavior.
Yeah.
We know that. And so it's just like part of like, okay, do you feel like you're entitled, or are you going to be humble and work hard? Well, Josh was humble and worked hard. And since then it's grown to the point where now he's running all the administrative logistical sides of our field training exercises at Echelon Front, where he's taken all the stuff off of Justin's plate. And then Justin, when we brought him on board, he was taking all that over. And now as the company has grown and expanded, Justin's now more focused on our sales side and growing out sales for all of Echelon Front, not just for FTXs. Yeah. And in order for Justin to be able to do that, Josh needed to take stuff off of his plate and have alignment with Cody and Heather and Jen from the ops side and everything else like that. And so he's now at that point where we are running FTXs because of Josh's involvement, where yes, he's 1099 part-time, but he's working these things full-time. Yeah. And that's because he implemented the laws of combat, the mindsets of victory that we teach at Echelon Front into his business.
Right.
He's been able to properly implement decentralized command and shows people that he cares about them. He trusts them. He listens when they talk. He shows them respect. He allows them to influence them. We were talking the other day about one of his instructors going, hey, I was thinking about doing this in the evenings on this day for this time, and here's why, and here's how we're going to do it. And to the point where all Josh had to do is go, sounds like a good idea. Yeah. What can I do to support?
Green light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a leader's dream.
Yeah.
Is to be
Tell me about it.
Just to have these people just being proactively trying to solve problems and make things better. So he has a team of people doing that. He's doing that at Echelon Front. It's pretty rad.
Yeah. Yeah. And so quick rewind. So I read Extreme Ownership when it came out. I think it came out what year?
It was 2015.
15, yeah.
Yep.
So we knew each other.
Yep.
But I think it was after that. It's real blurry back there, but I don't think I knew you worked for Jocko until after.
Yeah.
After, because he went on Rogan's podcast. I know that wasn't his first podcast, but that's the first place I heard him.
Yeah.
And I always joked, I was like, well, I started jiu-jitsu before the influx of people from Jocko.
Before it was cool because of Jocko.
Because we saw like a ton of, which is awesome.
Thank you.
But I had my claim to fame, like I was already here.
Yeah. I was joking, say I was Jocko's, I was a fan of Jocko before it was cool to be a fan of Jocko. Because, we go way back.
A little way back.
Yeah, Josh the same way with his jiu-jitsu.
But I heard it on the podcast. I ordered the book. I read the book. And then I realized he worked for him. So that was like bonus points. But I had utilized Extreme Ownership in the medical manufacturing job. So like that was my focus at first, was business. And then I saw how it applied to life. So there wasn't an FTX program. There wasn't any of these things. It was literally just the book at first.
Yeah. And then I came on board in October of 2016 at the first muster. So that was a time frame when you read the book.
Right. But even then it was so apparent. It spoke to me so well that I could start applying it to my life too, my marriage. I applied it again to my business when I started it. And so like, then when the opportunity comes along to have anything to do with this, like, so again, the trend here is fitness kickboxing fulfilled me. It helped me. I wanted to help other people with it. Extreme Ownership comes along. It's helped me in my business, in my marriage. And then now I get this opportunity to go be involved in as little or as much as I'm allowed to start. Like this is hitting on, again, what that mission is. Like, this has helped me, and then I can help facilitate other people get this. Yeah. And it was just an easy no-brainer.
Yeah. I will say that the thing that also has always stood out to Cody and I with Josh, and also to Justin and even Leif and Jocko, like they know these things, and and Jamie as well, is Josh's patience with the growth of Echelon Front, because we're we're a decent, we do a decent amount of work, right, as an organization. But yet that doesn't mean that the organization is growing and expanding at the rate that others would want it to be.
Right.
And so Josh has had that tactical patience, as we talk about, of like, okay, cool. I'm getting involved at this phase. Cool. That might mean that I'm going to be part-time 1099 for 2-3 years. Now, that's not ideal, but it's also not a bad thing. It's not horrible, but it's him having that patience of going, oh, cool, I'm helping build something. It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to be a part of anything that is in the beginning stages of growth. Yeah. And, from the standpoint now, even like, I want our listeners to hear, like, from Josh, who is coming in as a support personnel to, hey, I want to support the mission. I believe in the mission. I want to support the mission. I want to help you guys out. Cool. What can I do to help? Like, that's what people tend to miss out on.
Yeah.
They unfortunately, some people have this sense of, and I've seen it at Echelon Front, which is crazy. And, obviously those people are no longer there. And I see it in businesses a lot, is where people will come in, and because they're helping, now all of a sudden they have this entitlement of like having things at a big level, and you're like, man, if we could, we would. And it's been cool to see that. And I know you see that within your church, right? Yep. For giving people opportunities. And, and Josh has seen that with Total Fitness Kickboxing as well. It's, I'm sure you've had people that came in to help as being instructors, and then all of a sudden they're like expecting you to open a new location so they can run that region.
I have heard that one.
And you can pay them dollar bills, y'all.
Yeah. So, and that's what's so cool about these, these things in particular, and how once you work the steps and you're invested in the laws of combat, you can actually now allow yourself to go and expand and to do other things. And, one of the things you said about being intentional about helping out, I was actually talking with somebody about this. I've got a friend who is working for a small local business. They're expanding their hours, and as they've expanded their hours, they've hired new people, and they're actually going to cut his hours 10 hours a week. And he called me today, and he was like, I'm livid, and he wants to go in and he wants to talk to the boss and just like give him an earful about how much he's invested in the company, and like, I helped you when this was nothing, and you opened the store, and I'm, got it set right, and now I'm losing 10 hours a week, and it's like, hold on, is this something that he did to you, or is this something he did for the business? Like, let's detach, let's take a step back. Mm-hmm. He did not do this to you. He did this for the business. So if you can go in, have a meeting with him, have a meeting with, your regional manager, and say, listen, super stoked that this is growing. I understand we're hiring more people. More people will need hours spread, across the thing. I've lost 10 hours a week. I really want to stay here, believe in what the company's doing, believe in the mission. What can I do to make up these 10 hours a week so I can be part of the future of what you guys are doing, because I really believe in what's going on? I was like, bro, I can't promise you that you're going to get exactly what you want, but I can tell you, if you have that attitude, you've just shown him that you are way more valuable than everybody else that's a part of this. And when that ability to scale comes, you're going to be on the team, instead of like what JP's talking about, the people. And I think that this particularly happens with organizations like Echelon Front, where you've got somebody at the top like Jocko that is a well-known public figure. And then whether or not, like, okay, so I did an event with Echelon Front, and now I get to say that forever, right? I've got that bragging right at the gym. I've got it at the Jiu-Jitsu gym. I've got it at the bar with all my buddies. And that it didn't mean more to me than just being able to say that. I get to put on my resume, I worked with Echelon Front. And there's a difference between the guy that wants it to put it on his resume or to be able to tell the story, and the person that wants to, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, earn that black shirt, every day of the week, earn that spot at the table. And that's the difference between the dudes that stick around on the team and the ones that you're like, hey, listen, thanks for coming, man. We appreciate your effort today. And don't call us, we'll call you.
and the people that situation has happened with, they're not bad people. It's just like that we did not have alignment.
Right.
And that's okay. That's again,
not everybody's a great fit.
And it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. There wasn't alignment, and desire and capabilities are two different things. And we have to be capable of maintaining alignment, and that means, if you're wanting to be a part of a team, then you should be able to conform to the culture of
Right.
that organization.
And it's not hard. I mean, that was the easiest. It was the easiest transition for me. I mean, I showed up to volunteer at that first one in 2018, and then I was building TFK, so I didn't do anything for a while. And then it was, hey, come sling shirts at the merch stand and wherever, just for the must. That's 3 trips a year. So it's not like you just show up and start doing things. Like if you believe in the mission, and even those little interactions I had with the attendees and the team, and here, $30 for your shirt, but getting to hear the training, it just furthered that mission. But the biggest thing was seeing, as the team grew, how the team interacted with themselves, keeping that alignment, the willingness to support, the willingness to cover and move. Like, it's still a team of people. They say that all the time at the FTXs. Like, there's still problems. It's just how quickly and people go about to fix those problems.
Yeah.
That makes it one of the most top-notch things. And as I've continued to grow and have the honor to do things in there, it just expands that so much more and more and more. And then, I mean, when you show up, so my first time as a role player at the FTX, I mean, you've got Cowie, you've got Jesse, you've got like these studs, these people that are Green Berets and Navy SEALs, and now they run Denver SWAT. Like, I have something to say. Like, there's a keep your mouth closed and listen, and you'll learn some things. And they don't come across that way. I hope nobody misconstrues that.
No.
But there's a lot that you can learn as a new person there. I remember my first one getting ready to go. I asked JP, I was like, okay, what do I need to know? And he was like, there's this guy named Jesse. Do what he does and listen to what he says. That was my training. And so I found Jesse, and I was like, what do we do now? And it's being aligned with that mission and being willing to take on whatever you can to further it. That's what makes the difference. You're definitely not in there for, like you said, just to be like, I worked for Jocko. Like,
Yeah. And, when Josh shares that, like, I mean, that was the guidance I gave him, because it was also, yes, he's one of my friends, but like, you have to be able to separate business and friendship. You have to. And while he, yes, is one of my at the time, one of my very close friends, now one of my best friends, absolutely. But at the time, I also, to preserve our friendship, needed to see what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to see, not like, hey, Josh, what do you want? I needed to see. And you can see what people want by their actions, not their words, but by their actions. And so that's why I gave him that, hey, get with Jesse, listen to him, ask him for help. Like, Jesse's the guy. And I wanted to see, like, is he going to be humble enough to go to another man and be like, hey, what do I need to be doing? What can I help with? Because I also know Jesse's a great leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Green Beret, was in Afghanistan when the war first kicked off, was a firefighter when he got out, became a police officer, has been on Denver SWAT for an ungodly amount of time, was a sergeant with the gang unit, is back on the SWAT team in a leadership role. I mean, it's incredible what this guy has done and does. He's a phenomenal leader, and Jesse's been helping us with FTXs for almost 7 years now.
Yeah,
and he looks like Handsome the Rock.
Well, in what you said, like, beyond his resume, I also knew he had been doing it for years and years and years. Like, this guy, no, and it doesn't.
And he cares, man.
It doesn't. I was about to say,
it
doesn't hurt at all that he's such a good person and he cares. Mm-hmm. And I can take that full circle. So Jesse's still on the FTX team. Mm-hmm. I run even in my small box of what I'm responsible for. I run ideas by him, like, what if we did this? What if we did that? And it doesn't. I'm not in charge of him or anything, but just little ins and outs. Like, I was thinking this, I was thinking that, and he's always good to give me feedback. My point in saying that is, he's also comfortable enough to give me honest feedback. So I've had a couple, and I don't think he'll mind me saying this because he did it for my growth. I would check in with him, and he had not
feedback points.
Yeah, and they were things I needed to improve. Mm-hmm. And I took them to heart. And then the next time I had another one, and there were still some things that were not great from the first one. So but he was not afraid to tell me that, not because he wanted me to be like, yeah, you did this so bad, but because he cared. Also, and he could correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have a good enough relationship that he knew that I really did want to get better, and I was taking it to heart.
Yeah.
I don't think he would disagree with that, so I'm comfortable saying that. But yeah, the relationship there with that, and being willing to learn from somebody that has been doing it longer than you, and also has this impressive resume that they never brag about, but these are legit accomplishments. Like that's what you want to learn from.
Yeah. So I think that's a good pivot point for us to, close this out is, and obviously we'll get you back on here and, we can talk about more business specific things, because I know there's a lot of business knowledge that you have that our listeners can benefit from. And, I would love for us to talk about why you and your wife homeschool and your thoughts behind that. We homeschool as well. I know Lucas probably going to do the same thing.
Yeah, currently we homeschool.
And so, but I just want to say thank you for your time. Obviously, I want to be respectful of your time. And I think it's a good pivot point to, as we close it out, for our listeners to really think about, like, hey, there are a lot of opportunities that you have in your life. Are you willing to put in the work? Yeah. And, I know you listen to this podcast, so I'm going to close it out with some things, and then we'll have you share some final thoughts before I close it out completely. So, hey, we appreciate you guys for listening. Have some updates as we're closing this one out. So I just want to thank you guys for the time you guys spend to listen all the way, sharing, subscribing, commenting. Hey, if you're not, subscribe to us on YouTube. You'll be notified when YouTube exclusive episodes come out, or any little videos that we might be working on in the near future. If you want to follow us on social media, I am at JP Dinnell. That's JPDINNELL. And then Lucas is at Lucas Pinkard, Lucaspinkard. And Josh is at Josh Straussberger. So that's at JoshStraussberger. And then also Total Fitness Kickboxing is what? What are those two on social media?
Let me double check. It's TFK _Denton and TFK _The Colony.
Yep.
I believe.
I'm just glad I don't have the hardest name on this podcast this week.
Straussberger.
Yeah, good luck typing that in there.
Yeah, TFK _Denton _TX. And then the other one I think is TFK _The Colony _TX.
Cool.
But it's
awesome. If you go to Josh Straussberger's page, which is JoshStraussberger on Instagram, you can find the other businesses he's a part of. Boom. We talk about On the Path. Josh and I are business partners with On the Path Printing. So if you want to send us a message at On the Path Printing for any of your apparel printing needs, send us a message. Make sure you're checking out Echelon Front.
Right
well,
There's some cool stuff coming from
there
On the
is,
Path. I watched Isaac was wearing one of the new Be About It shirts.
Yeah, for Jesus
and
and
some
Jiu-Jitsu.
of the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu reels.
Yep.
Pretty bustin'.
Also, make sure you're checking out Echelon Front. Go to echelonfront.com, click on events. You can see all the different events we have. We have the muster coming up. We also have the muster with a one-day FTX. Actually, all the musters this year is going to include a one-day FTX option, so the opportunity to run through that FTX right after 2 days of the muster, which is going to be incredible. We also have the individual FTX coming up. It's trending towards selling out pretty close.
Yeah.
The one in March here in DFW. Also, if you want us to come work with your company, we are a leadership consulting company that was founded by Jocko Willink, Leif Babin in 2012. They wrote Extreme Ownership in 2015. I came on board as a first instructor in 2016. Dave Burke shortly thereafter. Jamie Cochran, day one employee, helping out, and it's really cool that I get to be a part of the leadership team with them. And
new editions of their second book, Dichotomy of Leadership, now, which is pretty cool.
That's right. I forgot about that.
The updated edition. What I really want them to do is I want them to update and do a third edition of Extreme Ownership, and all of the times where it says, or that there's a reference to you that doesn't say your name, now that you're out of the teams and they can put it in there. Like, I want to know who's who in some of these stories now that we've got more guys that are out.
Yeah, like Matt Hasby.
Like Hasby and some of those, and especially some of the guys that are working there. I think declassifying some of that stuff would be kind of fun. Yeah,
that'd be cool. Also, Josh and I are part of a ministry called Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu. We run that with Stephen, Lucas, and Isaac. We have a podcast that has episodes that come out every Tuesday. we're doing an event every 4 to 6 weeks. Our next event is Saturday, February 15th at Double Five in Highlands Village. Victoria is going to be our expert. It's always a great time. You know, we give a free jiu-jitsu seminar. Someone shares their testimony. Actually, we know who's sharing the testimony. Titus Katone is sharing his testimony, which is going to be incredible.
Pretty rad.
And then, open it up for some open mat training. Also, make sure you check out Little Cattle Co.
Get that beef.
Yeah, dog. Texas Beef Company I'm a part of. I'm going to give you guys a heads up. You probably got the emails if you're part of it. What we have on the website is going to be all that we have for a while. They have decided to shut down, or I should say pause, the beef sales for an uncertain amount of time while we work on a restructure of Little Cattle Co. Needing to create a sustainable structure with the beef and the beef sales. The tallow we are going to still be doing. The beef sticks we're still going to be doing, but we're placing a pause on the beef sales. So whatever's in stock, that's what we got for a while. But we will keep you updated on that. We appreciate all the support you guys have given. It's just a pivot that we're needing to make in the business, and look forward to seeing how that, as we say, play out. But you can still be a wholesaler for the beef sticks and the beef tallow products that we have. So if you want to be a wholesaler for that, or if you have any questions on the pausing of the beef, send an email to amanda@littlecattle.co. And we will get back to you and help, you guys navigate that transition and shift. Also, Leif, Jocko, and I have a company called Bruiser Arms. You can check us out on Instagram. It's @Bruiser Arms. Send us a message about any custom gear packages you would like us to help facilitate, and or custom training programs that we can put together for you. Also, go to originusa.com, jockofuel.com to check out some incredible 100% American-made jiu-jitsu gear, huntline gear, pants, jeans, boots, hoodies, sweaties, belts, wallets, all the things that are 100% American made. And Jocko Fuel and the joggers are awesome. JockoFuel.com for the supplements, that clean energy where Drink the Discipline goes here on the show. All the other supplements are awesome. Milk is an incredible tasting protein.
The krill oil. I'm a big fan of the krill oil right now because I got old man joints. And the krill oil is, that's the thing I think that's keeping me moving.
Yeah. Josh, what closing thoughts do you have?
Man, I'm just honored to be here. Obviously, I listen to the podcast. There's been some incredible guests. Some of them I know, some of them I don't know. And then to even be included in the mix was humbling. So
well deserved.
I appreciate being here and the opportunities you've given me over the years, your friendship. And, man, closing thoughts, kind of like we were talking about. I think if there's something you want, you just need to be willing to put in the work. And I think a level of that, I don't know if I touched on that, but as you're growing, the people you surround yourself with are going to come into play on that. Like your supporters, your closer circle. Like it's very important that you have the right people around you and that you have the right mindset as you go forward with whatever your goal is, and that can apply to anything in life, business or whatever. So, but you got to go through the work to get where you want to go. So,
yeah, I agree. Well, I appreciate you being here, bud. Appreciate everything that you do, and I hope that this episode has been a great reminder to our listeners, as I know it was to myself, to go out there to continue putting in the work that was needed, to put in the effort, to build your legacy, and to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 71.